Lord have mercy, it's Amplitube 5. This thing is an absolute beast, it really is. IK Multimedia have very kindly given me Amplitube 5 Max, so I can show you absolutely everything available with this package and all the possible options. I'm going to get into a nice in-depth look at it. But before we do, let's have a listen to it in action. I've got an indie guitar wall of sound thing going on here, using 6 instances of Amplitube. And it sounds like this. A nice big jangly, very Marshall orientated wall of sound, and I specifically went for this type of thing because too often with these amp modelling rigs, when YouTube channels, guitar YouTube channels try them out, they tend to stick to like hard rock and metal. But to me, what really shows the quality of a rig is when you do the jangly stuff and the more clean stuff. Yeah, now that to me is right on the money. It really is. This new Amplitube sounds fantastic. So before we get into a good old in-depth look at this, how did I get this together? Well, this is an old song I recorded a couple of years ago. As far as I remember, I did most of the guitars using a 72 Deluxe with mini humbuckers. And the strings were pretty well worn out, which is what I like. I don't like a really super clean new guitar string sound. Another thing to note is, if we look at just one of the guitar tracks, here's its channel. When I first recorded this, I used all those plugins to get the guitar sound for this one track. A noise gate, a pedal board plugin, the amp modelling rig plugin, a channel EQ, a compressor and a tape delay. But now all of those plugins have been replaced with a single instance of Amplitube. So across the 6 guitar tracks, I've replaced about 50 plugins with just 6 instances of Amplitube. It's fantastic, this Amplitube. You can do the entire mix, including the output mix, all in-house. You don't need to use any other plugins on the channel in your DAW. Fantastic stuff. So, how did I get this sound together? Well, it's built around this pair of double-track guitars here. Okay, and they sound like this. Great stuff, man. It's got that's the Les Paul Deluxe with the mini humbuckers going into that Marshall rig sound with all that jangle and the tone. You can hear the strings are not quite tuned perfectly. I don't like guitars to be perfectly tuned and all that, right? Great. Well, what's doing these 2 double track guitars? Well, look, believe it or not, this is one of the rigs. It's the default rig, mate. It's the default. Just a straight Marshall into the cab, no effects, no pedals, no EQ, nothing. Right? That's one of the guitars. And then the second of the double tracks, again, all those plugins now replaced with a single Amplitube. It's the default Marshall rig again. That's all it is. It's just 2 default Marshall rigs. But this one, I've done just a few tweaks on the cabinet. I've put the U87 down the bottom, so it's not on the centre of the cone, and it's by the floor, picking up some bass ended reflection. So it's a bit meatier, this one, because in the mix I've got that bottom mic up a bit relative to the other. So this rig's going to have a slightly meatier sound, but again, no effects, no pedals, no EQ, nothing. And that's it. Just 2 straight default Marshall rigs giving me that very, to my ears, that is the sound of my 72 Deluxe going into a Marshall. It's wonderfully harmonically rich, and it's got that, you can hear the tone of the guitar, and it's got that jangle and everything. Right, that's the core of it, right? And I'm panning the two guitars out, left, right a bit on the door pans, not using the pan on the instances of amplitude on each of those tracks, although you can do all the panning on amplitude if you want, but I've just panned them quickly with the door. Okay, that's those two, the core of it. And then there's a couple of pick guitars. There's this clean pick guitar here, well, semi-clean. Again, all those plugins now replaced with a single Amplitube. Here it is. Different rig this time. This is a very dry, slightly driven, very fractionally driven guitar picking thing. Yeah, it's got, you can hear the wood of the guitar, it's harmonically very rich, you can hear the worn out string sound, very nice indeed. Now this rig, it's some, I don't know what this amp is, it's some boutique custom American head, not much gain. I'm driving it with a Mudhoney, which is doing very little actually, very little gain, tone rolled off a bit, into the head and then into the cab. It's the standard mics, but they're just pushed out a bit from the centre of the cones so they're not too biting and edgy, a bit more mellow. I'm not using the overheads at all actually in the mixer here. Look, it's nearly all the SM57, that mic with a smidge of that mic, just a little of the second mic, and no room mics. And that all goes to the bus, straight down the middle, it's panned and then off to the final output. And I'm just adding a little bit of LA2A compression, just a smidge, and that's that sound. Alrighty, and then that's complemented by a second picking guitar here. Again, all those plugins now replaced with the single Amplitube. And this is doing it's picking out the bass notes, and it's in reverb with a very woody upper mid honky tone like this. And that's that sound, right? And it's a slightly different rig. Signal comes in through this diode overdrive. Quite a lot of distortion, but the tone rolled off and not much level, driving into this old Fender head with the bass turned right down. Now this old Fender head is getting quite a lot of that honky tone, but there's a send return loop on the head, and in the lunchbox rack, you know, you can put rack effects in a lunchbox. These are known as lunchboxes, right? The signal's going out and back on a loop in the head, and in there's a parametric and a tube compressor. Now the parametric is doing an upper mid boost, just a smidge, and that's adding that little extra emphasis to that honky tone of the head. And then I'm splitting it off to two cabs, which are the default cabs for the head, which is a big Fender combo. Same cab, same room, same mics, they're just positioned differently. And then those two cabs are summed at the mixer. Cab 1, the bottom one, there's its two cabinet mics panned out. They blend with the room mic pair here. They all blend to its bus, which is panned right down the middle. The second cab, the upper one, its cabinet mics are panned out a little bit further actually, a bit less room. All the mics blend to the bus, which again is straight down the middle. So I ain't panning these out left, right or anything. Then the two cabs sum to the final output and go through the final output effects rack, and in there's this Fender lunchbox compressor set to the even higher mode, giving it some squish, and then it goes into this T-Rax derived Hall reverb, and that's that honky picking sound. Yeah, and that works with the clean, almost clean, dry picking guitar, and the two together work like this. Okay, that's those two. Okay, and then finally there's a tremolo guitar here. Again, all those plugins now replaced with a single Amplitube 5. Here it is. A bit more complicated, this rig. Come on, move. And it's doing this tremolo thing. It sounds like this. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, it's a split parallel rig. The signal comes in, it goes into the splitter, it's split off to the two rigs, and on the shared pedal board, the signal going to both rigs is being treated by this diode overdrive. Distortion rolled right off, tone up trebly, but quite a lot leveled, pushing into the two heads. It goes off to the two rigs, and the first one is this. It's that American boutique again, with a bit more gain. And it goes into the cab. I've got a 414 down the bottom off the cone, so a bit more meaty this mic. And then the sum of all those mics, the cabinet and room mics, goes out on the bus to the mixer through the bus lunchbox. Every cabinet room, the combination of the cabinet and room mics, passes out to the mixer through a bus into which you can insert two effects. And in here I've got a lunchbox delay set to left-right mode, doing a very short 48 milliseconds delay time. Feedback right down and full up mix, so it's all delay no dry. So I'm delaying this rig by 48 milliseconds. The second rig is this Fender Champ into its cab, and the sum of all its mics goes out on its bus to the mixer, passing through this little Fender reverb lunchbox, adding a smidge of reverb, and then the two rigs sum at the mixer. The Fender rig, cab 1, its two cabinet mics are panned hard left, blended with some room to its bus, which is panned hard left. And the second rig, the one being delayed, its cabinet mics are panned hard right, and with the room mics they go to its bus, which itself is panned hard right. So I'm panning these two rigs left right, hard left right, and the top rig is also being delayed by 48 milliseconds to add extra emphasis to that big left right spread. And then the sum of the cabs goes to the final stereo out, and it's here that I'm applying the tremolo with a tremolo pedal in a lunchbox container. So I'm tremoloing the sum of the cabs on the output, right? And this is the tremolo. It's set to a rate of 8 with quite a lot of depth. And then after the tremolo it goes into this API graphic. Bass rolled off, bit of a dip round the mids, 500 Hz, and some treble boost, mostly at 4K, a bit of 2K. Tiny smidge of 8K, although that's going to be just mostly upper end noise. Then it goes into this LA2A, and a tiny amount of compression is being applied, and that's that sound. And tonally, that guitar and the two picking guitars, the drier picking one and the reverby one, they're all occupying slightly different frequency emphasized areas. So they kind of just slot into each other's gaps a bit, so to speak. And if you're a complete beginner to this business of layering guitars, you just think of that famous bit of dialogue from the Rocky movie, Rocky 1. Remember that? Somebody's talking to Rocky, I don't know if it's Adrian's brother or whoever, and someone says to him, what do you see in that pet shop broad anyway? And Rocky says, well, I got gaps, she's got gaps, together we fill gaps. Which to me is one of the great lines from the history of movies. It really is. That movie is so underrated. But I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? You know, the guitars are sort of, to a certain extent, filling each other's gaps. Okay, well, that's those three guitars, and they work with the two double track chord guitars, and that's the overall guitar sound all together. Right, and that just leaves the bass, and the bass here it is. Again, all those plugins now replaced by a single amplitude. Here's my bass. And it sounds like this. I'll just turn it up a bit because it's obviously dropped down in the mix a little bit. This is the bass. And if you want to know, that was played with an 80s Aria Thor sound bass. Great guitar. Go away. I don't want to be interrupted while I'm working. Okay, so that's my bass sound. Now, what's going on here? Well, I'm using a straight rig with a parallel DI. Okay, so the DI splits off and blends back in here with the rig on the mixer. And in the DI chain, you can put up to 2 pedals or effects in the lunchbox rack, and I've got a Sans amp in there in a pedal container. I just loaded the Sans amp in straight. I didn't even tweak the controls, right? And then that goes to the mix where I'm blending it in with the rig. Now the rig, after the DI splits off, it goes into this bass compressor pedal and then into this old Ampeg. I've got the high and low ultra switches in, not much gain. Bass actually not up much, but a lot of mid-range push, but I'm pushing the higher mids and some treble. So I'm using the mid boost to boost the upper mids, bordering on treble, and some treble to get edge out of the strings. But because I'm using the mid to boost the higher, treblier mids, I'm losing some of the lower mid body tone from the rig. So if you listen to just the rig, and then it goes out of the head into this cab, where this is an old AKG D20, it's an old vintage dynamic, a bit of a more mellow sound, and on the mixer it's mostly that AKG, very little of the second mic and very little room going to the bus, right? And then on the output it goes through the final rack where a bit of LA2A compression is being applied. But it's about this it's about the DI. Without the DI it sounds slightly scooped. Right, a really nice, very deep bottom end, which is from the ultra switch, even though the bass ain't up much. But it, you know, it is slightly missing that lower body, so that is brought back in with the DI, which blends in like this. Right, and there's that body tone around 800 Hz, 700-800. 675, 67800, around there, you know, being brought back in to round it out. And that's my bass sound, man. And the bass just drops in underneath the music to give it that bottom end, and here it is. There you go, and that to me is a lovely jangly guitar wall of sound thing. It's as real as I want from a plugin. It's beautifully harmonically rich. It's got a really very analogy, realistic sound to it. But most importantly, I can hear the quality of the strings. I can hear the wood, the tone of the guitar, etc. like that, even when presets are driving it a bit harder. That's a really good sound to my ears, it really is. Okay, so Amplitube 5. As I said, I've got the full smash to show you. If you don't know my channel, I'm an old sound engineer, producer going back years. So I'm going to be looking at this from more of an engineer's and guitar and bass player's point of view. Whereas some of the other channels, you're perhaps getting it more from a guitarist point of view, and they're not going to quite understand the technical stuff from an engineering point of view that you can do, but I'm going to explain all that stuff to you, right? So hopefully this will be the full Monty. But Before we start, as IK Multimedia is an Italian company and in keeping with the Italian vibe, right? I'm going to make myself a little espresso, okay, and then we'll start looking at Amplitube 5 in depth. Just let me make an espresso and I'll be back. Alright, so I've got an espresso. Let's get into it. Amplitube 5. Well, it's had this super graphics makeover now. And now it's all drag and drop and click to select. If you want to, you can use Amplitube 5 without ever touching a menu pretty much. You can resize it now. Fantastic stuff. Okay, so I load a preset from my possible collections here, and when you load one of these presets, you're loading a complete rig. There's a rig that we see the signal flow in this wonderful display panel here, and your rig can have 4 possible configurations in terms of signal flow: single rig, dual rig, and that's parallel, triple parallel rig, and a true stereo rig with a left right in passing through a separate left right chain to a left right out. Just choose the one you want, or you can do it on the splitter box here in the actual signal chain. Clicking that cycles around those choices: single rig, double, triple, stereo, back to single. With a single rig, I can split to 2 cabs after the head, but only with a single rig. I can bring in the DI chain and blend that in with my cabinet and room mics any amount I want. If I'm using DI, I can use it with a single rig, a double rig, but not the triple, not the stereo one. And incidentally, with the triple rig, what's kind of cool is if you go to the mixer, cabinet 1, the center cab, all of its mics sum to its microphone bus, which is panned straight down the middle, but the other rig is panned hard right and the third rig is panned hard left. So you set up the triple like that. The 2 outer rigs are put panned hard left right and the center one straight down the middle, which is probably what you want. So that's a bit of a time saver. Right, so I said it's all click to select and drag and drop now. So I select the head, I can tweak it, and yeah, I can change to a different head from here, but what the hell are these things? With the graphics system we get this wonderful visual feedback from these super high quality icons for each bit of gear. So I select the head, and boom, I click and load different heads. It's as simple as that. And as I do, the cabinet changes to match. Boom, boom, boom. If I go to the cabinet room, this is everything to do with the cabinet, the room, and all the mics. Now, if I come here, it might be one of these mics is selected and haloed in orange. Well, if it is, I just click the cabinet. Now it is selected, and when it is, the chain link appears. With the cab selected, I'm free to try any cabinet with the head. The head remains the same, and I'm free to choose any cab, with my head. And they're organised graphically here from smallest to largest, so little tiny ones at the top. Let's have a little tiny 6-inch cab with that. Oh, let's try a 10-inch or a 1x12, or easy peasy. And as you click to load each of these cabs, you're simply loading impulse responses for the different cabinet, which leads us to the next thing. Look at the top, custom impulse response. Click that and you can use your own. There's a couple I loaded in a few days ago. Once they're in there, they're remembered. So start a new project in your DAW, load a new instance of Amplitube, go to custom impulse response, and there they are waiting to be used. Add new ones with the plus, select and bin with the bin. So choose your custom impulse response. Got a high pass filter, you've got a low pass filter, you've got a tilt EQ, you've got a size control, volume, phase reverse and delay. What more do you want? You're totally covered, mate. You can even use your own custom impulse responses. Right. Now, with the cabinet selected, if I de-tick the chain link, I've now disconnected the cabinet from the head. That's the fixed cabinet now, and I can go back to heads and I can try any head with that cab. The cab just stays the same. And I'm now trying different heads with the cab. So, you're completely free to mix and match. You either choose the head and then try different cabinets with that head, or choose a fixed cabinet and try different heads with it. Fantastic stuff. Easy peasy, right? Yeah. Boom, boom. I'm changing head, but the cab stays the same. Now, if I go back to the cabinet room and with it selected, re-tick the chain link, the cabinet will switch to match the current head. Boom. Now the cabinet's selected, I'm changing cab again. Brilliant stuff. And again, as I say, as I'm changing cab, I'm simply loading different impulse responses for the different cabs I choose. But it goes a lot deeper than that, because as you change the impulse responses by loading each different cab, you're loading the impulse responses taken at exactly the record positions that you put the mics in. It's really clever. Let me show you how it works. Okay, let me show you how that works. I'll make some changes to the mic room. I'll choose this mic and I'll change it for something different, just so we can see that I've actually changed the mic. And the same with this one. And then I'll even change the room mics. And at this point I could change the room as well, but I'll leave it as it is on that one, right? Okay, so look, I've made some choices, some changes. I've chosen a particular room, I've chosen my room mics, I've positioned them where I want, and I've changed my two cabinet mics. And I've positioned those where I want. Right? Now, as you now choose the cabinet and load different cabinets, your mic position choices are exactly remembered. And as you switch between the different cabinets, you're simply loading the impulse responses for the new cabinet taken at exactly those two microphone positions. Exactly. And they did that by using a mechanical arm to position the mics in front of the cones as they took the impulse response recordings. If we choose this mic and go into this VIR Tech, in front of the cone we see a grid, and we'll call this the X and this the Y axis. Now where the X crosses the Y axis, those nodes are the exact positions where the mechanical arm system could be positioned to in front of each cone for the different cabinets, and that way they could ensure that they always took the impulse response recordings at the exact same positions. On the X-axis, closest or nearest to the cabinet, and on the Y-axis from centre of cone to the edge of the cone. Right, let me show you a bit of footage from IK Multimedia's channel. Here's the mechanical arm with the X and Y axis arms. And those arms both have snap positions. So you can position the rig in front of a cabinet, plug different mics in, and always ensure that the mic is placed at the same different positions to record the impulse responses, both in terms of nearest to or furthest away from the cabinet, the snap positions of the X arm, and from centre of cone to edge of the cone, controlled by the snap positions of the Y arm. And in this bit of time lapse you can see the mic, and it's positioned on the X arm at the closest position to the cabinet, and it's working its way from the centre of the cone out to the edge of the cone at the different snap positions of the Y arm. And each of those fixed snap positions from centre of cone to edge of cone, the microphone takes two recordings, one with the capsule pointing straight on and one with the capsule swiveled round and coming in at a 45-degree angle, which gives a different sound. So you can see here, look, record, 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 snap to the next position, record, snap to the next position, record. When it gets to the very edge of the cabinet, it steps out to the next position away from the cabinet and works its way back in from the edge of the cone to the centre. And at each of those positions from edge of cone to centre, now at one snap position back from the cabinet, it takes two recordings. Straight on, 45 degrees, straight on, 45 degrees, straight on, 45 degrees. So I can only presume this allowed them to build a lookup table of impulse responses for the DSP engine to use. Okay, so with the snap-on, if I position this mic on this lower cone in this cabinet, two arm positions out from the cabinet, and the furthest arm position out to the edge of the cone from the centre of the cone, that's the position of that mic. We're now listening to the impulse response recording taken at that arm position for this cone in this cabinet, and further we can choose if we listen to the straight on or the 45-degree angled mic impulse response recording taken at that exact arm position. And then for the other mic it's the same. I'll just position it with the snap on, and I will position this one one snap out from the cabinet on the X arm, and 1, 2, 3, 4 snaps out from the centre of the cone on the Y arm. So for this cone we're listening to the impulse response recording taken at that mechanical arm position for the upper cone in this cabinet. Yeah. Well, if I now change cab, if the dimensions of the cab are different, you'll see the mics slightly shift. Well, let me choose this orange cabinet which is on the floor with no casters. You'll see both mics drop down. Yeah. But go in and look, and sure enough both mics are in exactly the same position. So we've loaded this new orange cab, but the DSP engine only has to load the impulse response recording taken at either 45 degrees or not, depending how you've got this switched, taken at that exact arm position, but for the new cone in the new cabinet. And the same with the other mic. The exact same position. We're playing back the impulse response recording taken at that exact arm position, either at 45 degrees or not, but for the new upper cone in this new cabinet. I mean, it's just so clever. You get absolute consistency once you've set your mics, and then you start changing cabinet. And that works even if we go to a smaller cab. Let me go to a 2x12. Both mics are in exactly the same position, exactly, playing back the impulse response recorded at exactly the same arm position, but for the new cabinet. And even if you switch to like a smaller single speaker, let's say a 1x12, both mics are in the same position, exactly. Yeah, they're still playing back the impulse response recording taken from the new cabinet with a single 12-inch cone at the same two exact mic positions, and then you just blend how much of either of those impulse responses you're listening to from the two mics relative to each other on the mixer. Mate, it's so clever. If I now go back, and by the way that works with any cab, it doesn't have to be a 12-inch, I'll go for a 215. Both mics are in the same exact position relative to the cone and the cabinet. Exactly. We're now listening to the impulse responses for either mic taken at the exact same positions but on a 15-inch dual cabinet. Okay, so look, if I now go back to a 4x12, the mics sure enough are in exactly the same position. Right, playing back the impulse response, arm record position, exactly the same for this 4x12. But now what's happened is we've gone from a lower cabinet with a different configuration back to a 4x12. And the mics are sure enough in exactly the same position. So they're playing back, we're playing back the impulse responses taken from this new cabinet from exactly those mic record positions. But we've gone from a lower cabinet back to a 4x12 with stacked speakers. So this mic, while it's in the right position, it's on the upper speaker. We're listening to the impulse response taken at that exact position with the arm, but taken from the upper speaker, which will sound different to the lower speaker in the same position, because the lower speaker will include floor reflection. So fine, I use the arrow and drop it down onto the bottom cone. And now we're listening to that exact impulse response record position for the new cabinet, but from the lower cone here. Oh mate, it's flipping genius. Yeah. And that absolute trueness of playing back always the impulse response recordings taken from the exact same mic positions for each new cabinet you load works whether you're in the cabinet room with the cab selected, changing cabs while the head remains the same, or with the chain link on, you go to the head and change to different heads and the cabinet changes to match, go back and the mics are in exactly the same position. It's it's really, really clever. Anyway, that's how that works, right? But it goes a little bit deeper, because once you go into this VIR Tech, and I've snapped the position of the mic to a particular arm record point and chosen whether I'm listening to the straight on or 45-degree recording at that arm position, there's an orbit that's been created at that position, and I can rotate the capsule around that orbit. Now think about it. It doesn't matter if it's at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or anywhere in between. We're just rotating around the orbit, so wherever the capsule is, it's still playing back the impulse response taken that far out from the cabinet and that far out from the edge of the cone. But we're just working around the edge of the cone, always the same distance out from the centre and always the same distance out from the cabinet. But as we position the ball so that nearby cabinet speakers glow, the more they glow, the more their signal is being blended in, bleeding in with the original impulse response record position we're listening to from this cone, depending on where we put the mic. And as nearby speaker audio is blended in with the original impulse response we're listening to, they factored in things like phase cancellation. It's insane. And further to that, if we take the snap off, we're free to position the ball anywhere we like, in between the nodes, in between the arm record positions. In which case we're listening to an interpolation of the different impulse responses recorded at those snapping arm positions around wherever we've positioned the ball between them. Yeah, it goes really deep, man. It really does. It's so flipping deep. It's very, very clever the way they've done it. And as I said, I presume this allowed them to with the over 100,000 impulse responses in Amplitube 5 for all the different cabs. I presume that allowed them to then, as I said, build some DSP lookup table where the DSP engine says, well, you know, look, that's where the user has positioned the mic. So all I have to do as they change cab is just load each impulse response from each new cab they choose, recorded at exactly that arm position. And I choose whether to load the 45 degree or the straight on one, depending on whether they've got that switched. Mate, it's just really clever. Anyway, that's how that all works. Let's look at some other stuff. Okay, so further things. With any 12-inch cab, 1x12, 2x12, 4x12, you can change the speakers. Yeah, just choose the speaker position and select a different speaker to the one that was in that cab. Now, I don't know if IK Multimedia sampled every 12-inch cab with all these different drivers fitted in. Maybe they did. But if they didn't, then maybe what's happening is as you change speaker, each speaker is simply imposing a filter over the original impulse response recording you're listening to, recorded at that particular arm position for that cab. But however they did it, it works. Changing speaker does make a difference. It's only subtle, because all 12-inch guitar speakers essentially respond the same. They're designed to work with guitars. But there are subtle differences. Tonally, they're slightly different. Some are darker, some are brighter. They have different resonance areas, frequencies, and when they grit or distort, the fizzle or frequencies, or the distortion frequencies, are slightly different as well. So yeah, you can change speaker in any 12-inch cab and it does make a difference. And then the mics themselves, again, I don't know whether IK Multimedia recorded the impulse responses at all those arm positions for every single cabinet with all these different mics. They might have done. But if they didn't, maybe what's happening is, as you choose a different mic, it simply is imposing a different filter, so to speak, onto the impulse response recording you're listening to at that mic position from that particular cab. But however they did it, it works. Changing mic does change the sound. They're all slightly different, some of them more so than others. And the variety is good. You get everything from warm, meatier ones, let's call it, to finer ones. They've got slightly different presence frequencies and all the rest of it. And your choices are, that's a short SM57 there. That's an old AKG vintage D20. These ones had a really good bass handling. It was used a lot on the Abbey Road sessions, so it's a mellow old sound. You got a Electric Voice RE20, and you got three old Sennheisers. The MD41, the MD609, the MD441U, and then condensers. You got this old Neumann bottle from the olden days. I think it used the M7 capsule, this one. That's the AKG C12, known as one of the big 5 mics. That's like the 5 best vocal mics ever made. Usher used this mic a lot for vocals, as did many other people, but it gets used for overheads, all sorts. I think they used the C12s for the kit overheads on Metallica's Black album, actually, and I can tell you that they used the Sennheiser MD609 inside the toms. This particular mic handles very high signal levels. Some say it's the greatest guitar cabinet mic ever made, anyway, whatever. And then you got these two large diaphragm Neumanns, the U67 and U87. You got this Neumann, what is it, the KM84? It's a classic Neumann pencil condenser mic. That's the Neumann TLM170. That's the AKG C414, studio standard mic, super clear, super clean, blah blah blah. That's the Groovetube's MD1B FET mic, and that's the Browner VM tube mic. And then for your ribbons, you've got the Royer 121, which is sort of like the Rolls Royce of ribbon mics. Frantically expensive, they're like $1,200 each or something, or euros or pounds. And that's an old Bayer dual ribbon 160, and that's the Groovetube's Velo 8, just so you know. But anyway, I mean, however they did it, changing mic does change the sound. And then finally you got this mini mixer. Oh no, wait, Room mics. Let's look at those quickly. Room. Your choices are these 4. The Neumann U87s or TLM 170s, and the AKG 414s or the C12s. What more do you want? Yeah. The best way to do it with the Room mics is choose your mics, choose your room, adjust your Room mics with the volume turned up so you can really hear what they're doing. And when you've got them to the right sound in terms of the width, then just lower the volume of the room down to suit. And as far as the rooms are concerned, these are your rooms: large studio, hall, mid studio, amp closet, small studio, garage, subway and bathroom. And they're all more or less reflective, bigger and smaller. The subway is interesting actually because it's very long but also obviously very reflective, so it behaves like a really long natural linear echo chamber, so the width of the room mics really can change the character of the decay and other things, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, that's your choices, right? Then finally there's this mini mixer. As you're tweaking your mics, you can go to the mixer here and adjust the 2 cabinet mics for volume and pan, and the room mics for level and width, and then they all go to the bus and you can tweak the bus level and pan and adjust your DI if you're using it level and pan. But you've got a mini mixer here. Yeah. So choose the mic, volume pan, and whether you're listening to the 45 degree or straight on impulse response at that mic position on the grid. Second mic, volume pan and 45 degrees. The room pair, adjust the width like that or use the control, volume. They all sum to the bus volume and pan. And finally there's your DI to tweak if you're using it. By the way, the DI has a time advance and retard to compensate for phase issues, right? And in the main mixer, that delay, advance or retard rather, for the DI is there on that screw head, right? Whether you're in the main mixer or the mini sub mixer in the room, every channel has mute, solo and phase reverse. Bing bang bong. That's your lot. That's everything to do with it. Amps, heads, cabs, impulse response system, mics, speakers for 12-inch cabs, everything. Alright, that just leaves a few bits. Pedals and effects. Let's look at those. Let's load up a preset. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Is that enough effects for you? I mean, man, seriously, you are so covered for effects, right? Okay, how does this work? Well, there's the splitter in the signal chain where you can split to 2 or 3 rigs. Before that splitter, there is a 6 maximum pedal board. We'll call this the pre-splitter board, right? Then, if you're using a split rig, there is a shared pedal board, which can have up to 3 effects in maximum. Now with a dual rig, the signal going off to both chains passes through that shared board. With a triple rig, only the two outer rigs pass through it. The centre rig bypasses and goes round. Alright, that's the shared pedal board. If you're using a single rig, it disappears. Right. Okay, after the shared pedal board, the signal goes off to the chain of the amps, and you have a dedicated 6 pedal board for each individual head. Post the splitter, that is. Right. And even if you drop it down to a single rig, you still have, there's the splitter, the pre-splitter board, and you still have the individual post-splitter board for that head. But we've just lost the shared board. Go back to the shared board. When you bring things back in, it remembers all their effects chains, and it remembers the shared board. Fantastic stuff, right? And with the shared board, when it brings it back, you know, from a single, if it's a dual rig, you brought one rig back, it puts it over the shared board over both, and if it's a triple, it puts it over the two outers and leaves the middle one. Yeah. So every head has its own post-splitter board with 6 effects in, and then every head that's being modelled, it doesn't matter whether the original model that they're emulating had a send return loop, you get one. So there's a send return loop going out from the head and back into the head, which passes through this 4 effect lunchbox rack. Well, these little racks are called lunchbox racks, right? So every head has a send return loop with up to 4 effects in. Then the signal goes to the cabinet, and the sum of all the mics goes out on the bus for that cabinet room to the mixer, and on that bus you can have a lunchbox with up to 2 effects. Then all the cabs, however many you've got, sum to the mixer, go out to the final stereo output, and it has a 6 output rack. Mate, I mean, you're totally covered. Yeah, let's go back to this pre-splitter board. So to get rid of a unit, you just drag it out. To put a new unit in, you just drag it and drop it into the chain like that, or get rid of it again, drag and drop it into the actual pedal board. To rearrange units, just drag them on the line like that, or drag them on the actual pedal board to reorder. To replace a unit, below it, just choose a new one from the list, choose a new pedal, or put a rack unit into that position in the board, because rack units can live in pedal boards and pedals can live in rack units. But you don't need to use the menus. As I said, I just choose this electric mistress and just click a different pedal and replace it. Boom, boom, boom. Or click and replace it with a rack effect. Any rack effects you put in pedal boards live in a container like that. Click to edit, tweak it, click the background to close. I'll replace that with a pedal again. Right. Every unit, turn it on, off, and the whole board can be bypassed, off, on, in the top left there. Right. Easy peasy, yeah? It's the same, any pedal board in any position. Racks, similar principle. There's your rack, drag the unit out to get rid of, it's gone. Drag a unit in and put it into the rack. Or drag it directly into the rack. Again, below each unit, choose a different one from the list, choose a different rack unit, or put a pedal into that position. But you don't need to do that. There's the unit selected, haloed in orange. Click to change it for a different one. Yeah. Let's choose that one instead, and this one here. Click to choose a different one. Easy peasy. Or put a pedal in there. Boom. Pedals living in lunchbox racks live in a container. Click to edit, tweak, close by clicking on the background. And yeah, there you go. And just like with the pedal boards, each unit on off and the whole rack can be turned on and off. Reorder by dragging or drag on the rack. Easy peasy, yeah? That's the same for all racks. They just have different amounts of stuff in. It's easy. And just to say, that graphics system where you recognise things by colour and shape, it works just as well with the pedals as with the heads and the cabs. You know, if you play guitar over the years a bit, you can go, oh look, there's a memory man. Oh look, there's an old Echoplex tape, you know. Oh, there's a big muff, there's a Sans amp, there's a Boss distortion. Oh look, there's a Boss Metal Distortion 1 and 2. There's an old MXR octave pedal, there's a Boss Overdrive, there's a Tube Screamer, you know. There's a Marshall Governor, there's an MXR Comp, there's a Boss Graphic, there's an MXR Graphic, etc, etc. You know, there's a couple of fuzz spaces, you know, there's a Boss Flanger, there's an Electric Mistress, there's a small stone phaser, there's an MXR Flanger, etc. Boss Octava. You know, you just can see things and click and select, and you get a wonderful variety. There's plenty of stuff, boutique pedals, all sorts. Yeah. Here's a wah pedal. There's a variety of different pedals that use rockers. There's a whole bunch of different wah pedals: bass wah, contour wah, dime bag wah, Fender wah, fuzz wah, Brian May wah, Satch wah, Jim Dunlop Boss, I think that is, and these, I don't know if they're later Jim Dunlops. And that one. There's even, where is it? Where is it? They've even got, there it is, the Warminator. Do you remember that? Whammy pedal, it whammies the pitch up and down with the pedal and all that. And there's 3 volume ones. Anyway, look, the point is this: with these rocker mechanism type pedals, right click on the pedal, assign MIDI wah, click learn, move your actual MIDI pedal, and you're controlling the wah, the volume, like that. Yeah? Or assign it to a door automation slot for control by the door, and that goes for any parameter of any bit of gear. You know, like this flanger, the depth there, look, right click on it, assign it with learn to a physical controller, or assign it to a door automation slot. Any parameter of anything can be assigned to a door control slot or a physical controller, like on the head here. Preamp volume, right click, assign with learn to a physical controller, or assign it to one of the door automation slots. Yeah, easy peasy. Fantastic stuff. As far as the effects are concerned, you get a great variety, and as I said at the very start of this, when I was showing you that mix I did, you know, I showed you one of the guitar tracks, and I said, well, you know, there's one of the tracks. Look at all those plugins I was using before to get the guitar sound, now replaced with a single amplitude. And I said, you can do the whole balance for your guitar in Amplitube. You don't need to use any other effects on the channel. Well, you don't. This is your final output rack, and you're fully covered for effects. Okay. So, I mean, you've got different delays. Boom, boom. But if I want to, I can put a pedal in there. I can go, well, look, I'll put a tape echo pedal in there in my final output chain to get tape echo. Right. So you've got different delays. You've got different reverbs. Some of these are taken from the T-Rax range. They're really good, particularly that plate. And for dynamics, you've got there's a Fender compressor, there's this tube compressor. But look here, you've also got 3 classic compressors: the LA2A, the 1176, and the Fairchild 670. And then for EQ, let's choose that one again. You've got things like, I mean, you've got filters. You've got loads of different modulation effects and pitch effects. But for EQ, you can put this API 10-band graphic in. Again, that's taken from the T-Rax range in terms of its modelling. There's a parametric too, in fact. One with 3 different bands. But, look here, you've also got a Neve 1081 and a Pultec EQ P1A. 2 really high quality EQ modules to go as deep as you want. So you can go as deep as you want with your EQ and your compression and effects and everything on the output. Save all that with your rig, and it will load in every project with the same EQ, same compression, same effects, everything. You can do it all in-house. You don't have to keep going, you know, you don't have to sort of go, oh, tweak my head, I'll turn the bass down or up or whatever. Oh, now I need to go to my channel EQ plugin and tweak that and then go back to Amplitude. You can just do it all in here. Tweak your head, go to the final output rack, tweak your EQ, tweak your EQ to compensate for what you've done. Easy peasy, yeah. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, you are fully covered for effects and pedals. Okay, so just the last few bits and bobs to look at. All the way through this, everything I've shown you, all the heads, all the cabs, all the pedals, all the effects, we've been looking at them in type mode, where they're organised by different types of head, cab, pedal and effect. But you can look at your equipment in collection mode, in which case everything's just organised into collections by artist and manufacturer. So there's all the Brian May heads, there's the Dimebag heads, there's the Fender heads, you know, there's the Jimi Hendrix heads, etc. Same with the cabs, same with the pedals, just all organised by manufacturer and artist. Yeah. So there's that. Other things, preferences. Well, this automation preferences here. These are all the possible parts of the chain. You know, so like there's the 3 amps. Even if they're not in a chain, they're listed here. And then there's the head send return loop rack for each of the 3 amps. And there's the 3 cab rooms and all the rest of it. And within any of these parts of the chain, you can assign bypass, mute or volume to an automation slot for control by your door. And that's just for bypass, mute or volume controlling any part of the rig. But as I already showed you, to control a particular parameter of an effect or the head or something, you right click on that parameter and assign it to one of these slots. Preferences is just whether the tempo source is from the host or taken from the preset. Because when you create and save a preset, you can set a tempo here independent of the door, and you can do a cabinet global bypass. And finally, this control is about assigning presets to program change numbers, MIDI program change numbers here. That's your settings. Other stuff, the menu system's really cool. Look, if I load up a preset like, say, Amplitube Collections, Amplitude SPX, which is bass rigs, styles, fingered, driven pop bass. Well, that's the preset I've loaded. But if I now click and open the menu, it opens expanded out. So I just bring my mouse over the top. There's my preset. I'm going to hunt desperately through all the sub menus trying to find it. I can easily then just load another preset from the same sub whatever collection. Yeah. Anyway, you load a preset and you tweak it and make it your own, and then you save. Now at this point, if you just hit save, you'd overwrite the factory one. But if you retitle it after you've changed the rig and save it, it will save it in the same factory folder. Whether it's a sub folder, sub or whatever, it'll save it in that same factory location alongside the preset you started with. But if you click destination, it opens your hard drive browser, and then you're free to put your preset into any of the collection folders that already exist, or make your own folders. You can make as many folders as you like to organise your gear how you want. And you can put tags and a description and everything when you save. You can even star it at this point as a favourite. Then you save it, and that all works with the browse system. So all presets show me the crunch rigs, or just the high gain rigs, or the lead rigs, or the fuzz rigs, or the lead and fuzz, or whatever, or all presets across all collections. Show me the rock presets, or the grunge presets, or the funk ones, or the fusion, or the reggae, or the fusion and reggae, etc. So you've got all that tag browsing. You can search and everything. And if you want, you can search individual collections rather than all presets across all collections. So this is the preset I loaded, driven pop bass, and I open the browser, and there's the preset presented like in the menu, ready for me to see. It's scrolled to show it, highlight it, so I know that's the one. Anything you want to make a favourite, just star it, and it's in your favourites. Don't want it there anymore, unstar it and it's no longer in your favourites. Easy peasy, right? So the menu system is really cool. Okay, this is the plug-in version. You get a standalone version when you buy Amplitube. I'll just quickly show you that. Here it is. And it's the same as the plug-in. Exactly the same. It works the same, everything's the same, but you can make it full screen. And you've got 3 sub-pages, like, let's call them. You've got an 8-track for recording song ideas or practicing with. It's got all the features, you know, it's got a metronome, and you can change time signature and change the tempo and change the pitch and put a loop going in whatever length, wherever you want, and all the rest of it. You just record on the tracks, and then on mix you've got a 3-band EQ for each track. And by the way, I've tried dragging and dropping audio in, and it works fine with AIFF, WAV, and even CAF files. So you can drag drum loops in to practice or record song ideas with. But also you can do things like dragging in an audio file of a solo, and then you can use the playback speed to slow it down up to half speed, and it stays the same pitch to help you learn a solo or something. So you got that. You got a loop station where you can, you know, loop phrases and layer them and all the rest of it. And finally, there's a live page, which just gives this really big display. And this is for when you own IK Multimedia's iRig Stomp, which is this fully comprehensive, very robustly built MIDI foot pedal system. And this live display just shows you what you're doing with the pedal. It shows you which preset you've selected with the preset buttons and pedals in your pedal board. You can assign them to these slots and stomp them on off and all the rest of it. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, so that's the standalone version. Yeah, really cool. You get that as well. Yeah, I mean, the new graphics, it's just a joy to use. It's so quick with this graphics system and the drag and drop, click and select and all that. Sonically, to my ears, it sounds as real as I could want from a piece of software. It's harmonically rich. It sounds really analog. Fantastic stuff, you know. And, you know, just finally to say, if you get the Max version, I mean, you're just totally covered for any genre in any era of guitar amplified music, for guitar and bass. I mean it, man. Any genre, any era. And with all the possible permutations of rig you can build, with all the different equipment, with the different sounds and everything, you're literally unlimited in the potential different rigs you can build, the different sounds. I mean, really, you have like unlimited power. No, really, I mean, you do. And just remember, there are 4 different versions of Amplitude you can get. I've just shown you the Max version with absolutely everything. But there's the basic Amplitube 5, which has 177 bits of gear. Then there's the SE version, which has 77 bits of gear. And the starter version, Amplitube 5 Custom Shop, is completely free. Like, totally free, and you get 39 bits of gear. Some different heads, cabs, pedals, effects, you know, it could be all you need. It's totally free. And whichever of those versions you get, they all have the custom shop built in, and the custom shop allows you to just try and demo bits of gear, and if you like them, you buy them all from within the custom shop. So you can add just the bits of gear you want if you don't get the Max version from the get-go. Yeah. And by the way, as you can see, all the different versions are money off at the moment. Yeah. And don't forget, there's always the free one. Yeah? So there you go, Amplitude 5. I told you it'd be a long one. And that just begs 2 questions. And the first one is, are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
I always put that in at the end of my longer videos, but I mean, are you not? Have I not shown it to you? You know what I mean? And the second question is Amplitube 5 now the best guitar amp software that you can get? Is it? What do you think? Let people know in the comments, man. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Please subscribe, put on the old notifications and all that, and check out the channel, by the way. As I said, you know, I'm an old engineer producer going back years, and there are hundreds of videos on the channel doing, you know, tutorials on all aspects, different aspects of sound recording, tutorials, production tips and tutorials, etc., etc. Across all different parts of sound recording. There's even stuff on Foley sound effects, and there's a massive reggae tutorial series. There's all sorts of stuff on there, man. Loads of GarageBand and Logic tutorials. So yeah, check it out, or try a keyword search for something you want to learn about, you know. Yeah, so please check the channel. Okay, hope that's useful. And I hopefully will see you for the next video. Alright, see you later, man. Bye.